And are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, some of you might remember me from a few years ago doing a similar presentation for 550 Palos Verdes, right across the street from this project site. Since that time, I've actually moved to San Pedro myself. So I'm a coastal San Pedro resident and proud and happy to be a San Pedran. So this is a project that is near and dear to my heart because it's in my town, our town.
Great.
625 Beacon is the block bound by 7th Street and 6th Street and between Palos Verdes and Beacon. So it's across the street from 550 that wrapped up a couple years ago, and across the street from City Hall. And it's just a wonderful opportunity for more mixed use living in our historic core. Let's see if the PowerPoint will go here. Perfect. So Holland Partner Group is the firm. We are an owner builder. We have built a lot of projects up and down the West. We're in Seattle, Portland, the Bay Area, Denver, and then down here in Southern California. So this is some of the projects we've done just in LA over the last 10 years. We have an in-house development team, an in-house construction team, and an in-house property management team. So similar to what we did across the street at 550, we were the developer, we were the general contractor, we built it, and we are now operating that building as the property manager. So let's dive into specifics of Beacon. So this is a shot. We're looking north, looking over 7th Street. Palos Verdes is the street to the left where we can look down the corridor. And behind Beacon, you can see the project that we recently completed, 550. So this is essentially a C-shaped building that opens up towards the south, let the sunlight onto the pool deck for as many hours as possible. It's an 8-story podium if you're standing on 6th Street, but because of the grade change, if you're standing on 7th Street, which is about 10 feet taller, it's a 7-story building. So as we look at it from this vantage point, it doesn't look like it's 8 stories tall. There's a total of 281 units. The unit mix is diverse, everything from studios all the way up to 3-bedroom units. And they're larger units. It's an average size of 889 square feet. There are 391 parking stalls in subterranean parking garage and similar amenities to what we have at 550. So there's a big, large roof deck on the corner of Beacon and 7th Street. You can kind of see how the building cuts back there, looking over City Hall. So you've got tremendous views of the breakwater and Alta Sea and Harbor West, Ports of Call. We've got a club room and a pool and spa down on the 2nd level or ground level, depending on how you want to call it, from 7th Street. And then a very large fitness center on the corner of 6th and Palos Verdes that activates the street there with a lot of activity. And then there's a restaurant space with a large patio on the corner of Beacon and 6th, looking over the plaza, the park. So we'll jump to a plan here. we'll go through 3 different plans to help everyone envision how the building is laid out. So this is, if I'm standing on 6th Street, this is the ground floor. If you were standing on 7th Street, this would be below ground. So it's important to remember that nuance. The main driveway and the only driveway is off of Palos Verdes. And that's how you would access the subterranean garage. The pedestrian lobby is the pink rectangle over there, right off of the green rectangle off of Beacon. So we're really pivoting our front door towards the park, towards Beacon, towards Farmers Market, trying to bring that element to our building and vice versa. And as you go along Beacon, there's an opportunity as the grade changes to have a few units, townhome style units that front the street there. And you'll notice that the sidewalks are getting larger, that there's bulb outs at the intersection of 7th and Beacon, which is a pretty large thoroughfare at the moment. So we're trying to encourage pedestrian activation. That's the main theme of the design here. Now, if we jump up to the 2nd floor plan, or if you're on 7th Street, might be the ground floor. You can see the outdoor podium deck overlooking the park and the port beyond. Get some channel views there. And then the south facing pool deck fronting 7th Street. There's a club room adjacent to the pool deck. And then similar townhome style units along Palos Verdes. Really similar to what we did at 550, outdoor living is the theme. We live at the coast, and let's enjoy the weather and the views. And so that's been considered throughout the design. So finally, I'm going to go up to the balance of the building. The typical floor, 3 through 8, is relatively similar. Most of the units offer private balconies. Again, having the space to enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the coast, enjoy the breeze. That's one of the benefits of living in San Pedro. The units are designed to offer views where we can, whether it's the port, whether it's the bridge, whether it's the breakwater, whether it's the Palos Verdes Hills behind us. There are wonderful views from this location. And so taking advantage of all of them has been considered in the design. And then, as mentioned previously, down in the bottom right here, the corner of Beacon and 7th is where our sky deck is located. Really, that corner at that height offers the most expansive view of the Pacific and the breakwater and Catalina. And so that's why that has been located on that edge. So these are all photos taken right across the street. This is what 550 looks like now that it's finished. So I'll stay here for a minute, but the finishes are the very best. There's stone countertops and stainless steel appliances and really nice fixtures and really nice bathrooms. The units have lots of light, big patios, big windows. It's a nice place to live. And then on top of that, the common area amenities, the pool deck, the barbecues, the fitness center, spaces where you can hang out with friends, family, other residents. That same level of detail and thoughtfulness and material selections will occur here at Beacon as well. I'd like to point out, because this was something that I spent a lot of time on, there's a boat hanging from our ceiling at the lobby of 550. It's a rowboat, but nonetheless, I don't know how many buildings have boats hanging from their ceiling. So that was kind of a fun detail we got to work in at 550. And if you haven't, please feel free to come down to the lobby of 550. The team is always there showing the property. It's fun to tour. It's a beautiful project, and there's a lot of things that the team is proud of. So please come down if you haven't. And the final rendering that I'll show you is the intersection overlooking 6th and Palos Verdes. So the storefront at that level is actually the fitness center for the residents. And the thought here is creating immediate activity. On day one, you're going to have people running on treadmills and lifting weight, and there's going to be street level activity. And that's really important for this urban living. Having eyes on the street, having activity, having people, it creates security, and it creates some energy that it creates critical mass and helps the neighborhood thrive. So you've got the fitness center there on the corner. And then as you walk down 6th Street, that's the retail space, the restaurant space that will then look out with its big patio out onto Plaza. And then up Palos Verdes here, you can see the townhome style units that have stoops on Palos Verdes. And that's similar to the design that we did on the other side of Palos Verdes within 550. And those units have been well received. It's a way that folks can live within an apartment community, but also feel connected to the immediate street. So we have some of those here as well. And so with that, I will unshare my screen and would be happy to answer any questions that anyone.
Thanks, Ryan. I see we have a couple of questions. We'll start with Linda Alexander.
Thank you
Linda?
for the presentation. It really looks very attractive. What is the demographic you'll be looking for to populate this building?
So these are for rent apartments. What we have noticed across the street, so across the street is 375 units. We're currently 85% leased, and we get around 20 new residents every month. So that the pace with which 550 has become occupied has been pretty quick, especially given the world that we've all been living in for the last couple of years. By and large, the folks that are moving into 550, and I'm going to presume that that will be the same demographic here, are folks that are coming from other areas in the South Bay, other areas within Southern California, and then there are a handful of out-of-staters that are new to California. By and large, it is a younger professional demographic, but by no means is that the hard and fast rule. So it's a diverse group of folks, but I would say the majority of them are new to San Pedro.
Interesting. And one other, laundry facilities.
Every unit has washers and dryers in their unit.
Ah, excellent. Excellent.
Eugenia, you have a question.
Hi, I'm not sure if I missed, I was a little bit late to presentation. I wanted to find out what is the range of the rental price from like a studio to the biggest one that you have?
Sure. Well, again, I'm going to keep referencing 550 because in many ways that's the easiest
Yeah,
data
estimate.
to pull from. So rent is, the average rent is somewhere around high 2000s, low 3000s per month.
Thank you.
Patney.
For a couple of questions, Brian. The townhome style still are rental properties, right?
That's correct. The difference with them is the configuration. So they are a two-story volume, and they essentially have two front doors. You can enter from the community side, or you can enter from the street. And so they live a little bit more like a townhome, but they are still part of the for rent offering.
One of the strongest elements of downtown renovation and connecting it to the waterfront was to make our community a walkable community. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so I was looking at where your pedestrian entrance is, and it seemed to, I know it's too late now to redesign it. The pedestrian entrance off of 6th Street, I thought might contribute more to a walkable community than off of Beacon. But that being said, the other thing is I've been down there a number of times. I just don't see much. 550 still feels like and seems like it's completely vacant. I mean, you don't see people coming and going out of it. What kinds of things have you thought of to try to get your residents in 625, into walking the community, becoming part of our
Sure.
community?
Well, I think the strength of the farmers market and the strength of our small businesses throughout the pandemic is in no small part to the fact that there are many hundreds of residents that are supporting those local retailers. So I'm not sure that your assessment is 100% accurate. There's a lot of people there that are coming and going all day. Personally, I noticed that parking is a little bit more impacted on the street than it used to be, because people are moving in and cars are getting parked along the streets. Folks are walking their dogs. So I think they're out there. Maybe spend a little bit more time and watch the entrance, because they're certainly there.
One of the questions that came up with the Topaz, but also applies to 550 and 625, is how do you draw people down 6th Street to the ferry building and make the pivot and go over to West Harbor and vice versa? So do you have, there are storefronts along 6th Street at the ground level? Is that right or not?
Correct. So there's a retail space on the corner of 6th and Beacon, as well as a fitness center. So I think naturally folks will gravitate towards West Harbor when it opens. That's going to just be a destination to go to. And again, I think that the outdoor dining and everyone up 6th Street has benefited from the fact that there's all these residents downtown. So I'm not sure that they're not there. Maybe we're just not counting them well enough. They're certainly renting the apartments.
Thank you.
Diana, name.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. I wanted to follow up on Pat's question though, Ryan, because one of the things he asked was, what kinds of things have you done to connect the residents to the community? And I'm wondering, I don't know if there are ever residents meetings, if you give out information about the Grand Vision Foundation, the Warner Grand, Farmers Market, what kinds of things have you thought of to kind of help them become oriented to our community?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't adequately answer that. When we first opened up, what we did with the P-bid was we put these little welcome baggies together. And in those welcome baggies, we had, coupons to Buono's and a free beer up at the brewery, and created sort of a welcome to San Pedro baggie. And so that was first units were rented out in March, April of last year. So we've been doing that. And then on an ongoing basis with the chamber, we've been connecting events for parades and farmers market and First Thursday, again, flyers. So they are given to the manager and those go into all the residents' mailboxes. So there has definitely been a lot of coordination with the local business and the new residents through the PBID and through the chamber.
So, yeah, it would be really great to have, I think, the name of the manager and how to give the manager things, if that's a good way to get information out. So, for example, I know Central has just done a new newsletter. It would be really great if that newsletter, I'm speaking for Central, even though I'm not part of Central, but it'd be really great to get that newsletter to the residents.
I completely agree. I want to extend the invitation again, because I think it's important for folks that are interested to go down and meet the team and also walk the property to understand what it is. And we're open 7 days a week. Stop on by.
I'd love to come to tell you the truth.
Great.
And Linda would probably love to bring you some newsletters, wouldn't you, Linda?
We're gonna do that, yes.
Perfect.
Jason, you have a question?
Oh, wait, I had a question though. That
Oh,
was
okay.
another question. My second question really, when we talked some time ago, Ryan, you mentioned that the exterior at the street level, you were making some adaptations to fit better into the community. You didn't really show us that, and I'm curious about what you did different, given that you were trying to be more responsive to the nature of the community.
Absolutely. And I apologize. It is difficult in this forum to really zoom in on a pretty picture. The challenge that I posed for the architects, and which I think they've done a good job of, is we have a beautiful city hall that I think we're all proud of. It's the era and architecture that it's historic. And at the same time, 550 is beautiful in a more contemporary way. And Beacon is right in the center. And so looking to the neighbors, it's important to us that it looks like it fits in with the fabric. And so specifically what we have done is along the street level across from City Hall, the material selection is a little less contemporary, and some of the detailing is looking a little bit more to our past, the way that some of the moldings might have been, some of the ledges might have been, the way that the doors and the windows orient on the facade. And so mixing that with a more contemporary style, as we've done on 550, we've sort of alternated that throughout the building so that it looks both ways, right? To the future and to the past. And I think that the architect, MVE, has done a tremendous job of being responsive to the neighboring styles and incorporating it appropriately.
Thank you. And then just while I've got the floor, I'll just remind any students that are here, if you put your names in the chat and your teacher as well, so we know how to make sure you get credit for being here. And anyone who wants to make a comment, anybody, you could just raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, dial *9.
Thank you. Jason.
Hey, Ryan, thank you for the presentation. It's a really attractive project. I have a question. So the roof deck seems like it covers a somewhat small percentage of the overall roof. Is there anything planned for the rest of the roof? It seems like, as we've seen with other similar projects of this height, when you're in the taller buildings looking down, you see these expansive gray blobs beneath them. I'm wondering if you had any other plans for greening or solar or some other covering on top of the roof.
Yeah, we are moving into a world where solar is becoming part of the mandated minimum build. And so between heating and air conditioning condensers and boilers and solar and elevator runs, the roof is pretty full with just what makes the building work.
Okay, so it's just not depicted in those drawings. Those things.
Right, yeah, that's a little bit more of a technical thing. It similar to 550 from the street level, you won't see any of it. The parapets go above any of the equipment. So we have all those same things at 550, but you just don't see it because of the angles.
So this building has a different facade than 550, I noticed. What was your choice between choosing a different facade versus having the same facade, or what was the choice thought there?
Yeah, and you mean architecturally?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being considerate of the buildings around us and the different architectural styles over the decades and centuries, just trying to meld a little bit more and be respectful that San Pedro is unique, right? These are buildings that are going to last for the next hundreds of years, and so it's important that it pay homage a little bit to what's around it. And so the materiality is a little bit different on this one relative to 550 and incorporates a little bit more of some historic gestures, given that City Hall's across the street, and at the same time doesn't turn its back on more contemporary designing, because that's the era we live in. And so I think along the street level where the townhome units are, it'll feel a little bit more historic in the detailing and the material choices. But then across from 6th Street and some of the more iconic elements, the Beacon Tower on the corner of Beacon and 6th, for example, will feel a little bit more contemporary. So just trying to blend between our neighbors.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice. It looked like a progression from 550 to this building to City Hall. It was almost like a linear progression of eras. I thought it was kind of nice how you guys did that. So we mentioned a little bit like solar being required. Have you incorporated any sustainability enhancements above and beyond what's minimally required by the city and state?
So title, I'm taking a moment, pausing here to answer the question, because we can get real technical. Title 24, which is the energy code that is the law that any builder follows, updates every 2 years. And the ultimate goal of Title 24 is to get to net zero, meaning you don't consume any more energy than you produce within a 12-month cycle. And so what's happening is we're nearing a place in time where the baseline code requirements of new buildings in the state of California are all equivalent to a LEED certified building as it is today. And it very well may be that 2 years from now, when full building permits are being secured, that we are in an even more environmentally friendly requirement. So I guess the short answer is we haven't fully designed all the systems yet, but they are exceptionally efficient. And it's not special to just this building. All the buildings are headed that way. And that what that does is it creates windows that have less solar heat gain, water fixtures that have reduced demand, the ability to collect stormwater runoff on site and reuse it as irrigation, the ability to generate your own electricity through solar, higher efficiency boilers that are not using as much gas. You can go down the list of things, but by and large, the building code throughout the state is getting to a place where we're very close to net zero.
Okay. What about, I mean, it's a little early in the planning, but I was wondering how many electric car charging stations you'll have. Do you have bicycle or e-bike parking, any other zero emission transit options included?
Absolutely. Again, this city of LA requirements already mandate a percentage of electric vehicle charging stations and bike parking. So we have both of those. As it is today, we have about 40 electric vehicle charging stations. You know, a lot of this gets down to consumer demand at the end of the day, right? We're offering a product and residents need to come in and choose our community to live at. If we're all driving Teslas and Bolts and I mean, gosh, F-150s, the way things are going, if that's what we're all driving 5 years from now, it behooves us to have EV charging stations in as many stalls as there is demand. And so we're designing and open to that in the long run because that's where consumer sentiment is moving.
So to that statement, as you mentioned, the building could be there for 100 or 200 years. Obviously, gasoline engines are sunsetting, and we'll see, you know, perhaps no more being produced by 2035. Do you have the ability to retrofit the building so every stall perhaps could have electric charging?
That's right. So what we do and what we've done, but really what we do on all of our buildings, and we did this at 550 as well, is the gear, the switch gear and the transformer that gets designed and set. So, you know, there's a dedicated DWP, I don't know if substation is the right word, but there's some significant infrastructure we put in. That is all designed for that future load in mind.
Very good.
And again, this is not unique to this project. This is what buildings do nowadays.
So just in general, you're planning for a future where every stall has a charger.
Yeah, that is our future.
Yeah. So I really liked the boat hanging in the 550. So as an avid sailor, could I advocate you hang a sailboat in the lobby of this building, or at least a sail?
Yeah, there's a lot of fun opportunities here to make the community special and unique. I think 550 has had the success that it has had because San Pedro is authentic and it's got a spirit and you feel it the minute you walk into it. And we were able to embrace that and play on it at 550. And we will do something similar, but different here. I'm feeling very inspired by the era of the City Hall across the way. You know, when you walk into City Hall and check in, that's a neat experience that that interior design, that architecture offers. And I'm toying in my mind with how could we embrace some of those elements and really be thoughtful of the history here.
Oh, well, thank you. It looks like a great project. Thank you. That's all I have.
Diana, do you have another question?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. First thing was, I love what you just said about embracing some of the elements of City Hall and trying to incorporate it. That's really great. And I want to say thank you. I know all the committee would say thank you for the fact that you're providing adequate parking. This has been a problem with a lot of developments, and it's really been a problem. So we really appreciate the fact that you're providing adequate parking. But my other question has to do with the 1% for the arts and how you are handling that.
Yeah, great question. There are a number of fees that we pay: park fees, Quimby fees,
Right.
fees, art fees. The short answer to your question is nothing is 100% finalized yet with how those dollars will be spent. But I think there is great opportunity in our downtown to continue to create interesting destinations, interesting things to look at, things to enhance the visitors and the tourists' stay when they're patronizing our small businesses and our restaurants. And so I think there's opportunity to explore with the community, having some art within this downtown core that would be to everyone's benefit.
I think we'd love to explore that with you. One of the things that it's a small little piece actually, that we've talked about in the past, is possibly having some decorated crosswalks in the downtown area and some of the, the medallions in the middle of the street, some things that kind of cause people to see something different as they're walking along. But yeah, I think we'd love to be included in that discussion. And I'm glad to hear you say that it's going to stay here in San Pedro rather than go down to cultural affairs, and who knows what happens then. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I think Chuck Hart has his hand up.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if he was keeping something or he was waving. Chuck,
Don't forget the fishing industry when you talk about San Pedro.
I'm sorry, one more time?
Don't forget the fishing industry history.
oh, fishing industry. Yes,
Absolutely.
thank you. I don't see any other comments. I had a couple comments myself. I'd like to commend the architects for addressing the massing properly, specifically around 7th Street. That feels good, that it's not a big block next to City Hall, so it looks good. Is the material that looks yellowish brick material, sort of to mimic City Hall?
It is. That's exactly.
And I see they picked up on the detailing, sort of the pattern of the windows and the sizing. I like how they did that. I wish they had done more of that. If it looks good, next to City Hall. So I like that feature. Like I said, I just wish there was more of it. Otherwise, I think it's a really good project. One question I had, you mentioned a sky deck on the 7th floor. Is that for private use, or is that intended for maybe public use?
It's private, so similar to 550.
Correct.
It's the same design programming.
Okay. Very well. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I see Pat Nave has one question.
Well, no, not a question, but maybe Ryan, maybe Holland Partners are the perfect people to go to the city and say, hey, can we have the 7th floor of City Hall? It's the old jail. It was known as 7th Heaven, and it would make an unbelievable restaurant up there. A beautiful place, mid-20s kind of style. Every one of those arched windows would make it a beautiful individual dining room. Maybe you could have meeting rooms over there or something like that.
That would be pretty neat.
Thanks again. I don't see any other questions, but we appreciate it, and we'd like to follow up on the project as it moves along.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're still at early stages, right? We have just wrapped up our entitlements, and so we need to begin construction drawings, which is a process, coordinating structural and architectural and mechanical and electrical and plumbing, and so realistically, construction start is in 2023, right? So we're coming up on 2022 here pretty quick, but we're still at least a year out, and then of course once we finish our construction drawings, we need to get a permit. And the city of LA, our experience has been that from the time of submittal until the time that there's a permit issuance, conservatively is 8 months. And so we're a ways off, but this is coming up down the pipeline. So we do appreciate the support.
Yeah, thank you. I know things are difficult processing permits and entitlements right now because of what we've been through, but hopefully you guys will make it faster. Thanks
Great.
again. And
Thanks for everyone's time.
I think we're all looking forward to seeing it.
Very good. Have a great evening.
Thank
you,
you.
Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, as he mentioned, a lot of the codes are looking forward to that net zero on buildings. I know from experience it's getting more difficult to comply. So the goal is by 2030, a lot of buildings will be net zero. So
Over what size project? Is that only at so many units that it has to be net zero?
no, it's in
Single
general, there's two things, the Title 24, which is energy, but it's also the California Green Code, which it has to do with like efficiency in a lot of the self-contained systems that are part of the building, water reclamation, energy usage, efficiency of mechanical systems. So there's a lot of that is getting more complicated as we get along. I mean, the amount of glass that you're allowed, it's challenging sometimes because everything has to be so efficient and so precise that if you give that to the glass, then you got to make it up in some other area. So I've been there and it's challenging. So in the end, I think we will all benefit, but it's not an easy job. So I'm glad to see that's coming into town. So we'll move on to our next item, which is item number 3. Consideration of letter to Caltrans related to unfinished sidewalks and intersections on Western Avenue. And Linda Alexander.
Yeah, I live on 11th Street, just below Western, a few blocks below Western. And I drive past the Willenberg School, which is on Weymouth, just right off of Western. And a month or so ago, I noticed they've ripped up the corners, and they've done a lot of electrical work and a whole lot of work on those corners. But they are leaving them as gravel. And I mentioned the Willenberg School because there certainly aren't a lot of pedestrians on corners on Western. I don't see them very often. But the Willenberg School has adult special needs people who do walk along there. And it's disturbing that apparently Caltrans dug all this stuff up, fully knowing that the supply chain has prevented them from finishing the work. And they anticipate it'll be a year before they can finish it. So have a number of intersections where all 4 of the corners are gravel, marked off with yellow tape, which has now been torn and is shredded. So the only choice you have is to walk on the gravel, which is unstable, or walk on the street. And while there aren't very many pedestrians, there's certainly many cars in these areas. Even I knew there was a supply chain problem by March last year. So I think what's happening is Caltrans had this in their budget. They had it in their plans. So they're just going ahead. And I would imagine the project with the labor, and they've got it all lined up. So they're continuing south at the intersections for Western. And it'll be a year or more, as I said, apparently before they get the, well, they don't know when they're going to get it, the supply chain, but they're estimating a year. So I'm particularly concerned about that one location where I actually see pedestrians, but I can't help being annoyed that they're not doing anything to make a safe passageway on this intersection. So I put, at Diane's encouragement, I put together a letter which references the report we received and from Caltrans explaining this. And then also, I think Diane had approached Patrick O'Donnell at some point. We got a letter back from them which explained the time frame. So there is a letter that went out today, I guess, for the package. So I guess what I'd be looking for is, I don't know how they could remediate this on a temporary basis. But they apparently have no interest in doing anything to improve the situation.
If I could say something, I think interesting that, accessibility being one, it's a problem, but also a liability for them since
Well, yeah.
those streets are open. I'm surprised they're not trying to complete the projects and
Well, they took the opportunity to do a lot of electrical work and some other underground stuff and with the traffic lights. And I'm amazed the possibility, the liability as well, that they aren't thinking that through very well.
What materials are they missing? If it's already covered up and dirted, are they out of cement? I mean, Home Depot's got plenty.
Yeah,
of
right. No, I think,
It's some of the electrical parts.
yeah.
that are missing.
They want to bury this electrical part. And of course, the irony is that the trigger for this was to improve ADA access. So
And safety.
not for safety.
yeah, that makes no sense.
I get it that they planned this work and they've got, they had it scheduled. I got that, but they should have come up with some temporary, semi-permanent solution for this.
Well, even if they were just to cover it with blacktop,
Yeah.
I mean, not my favorite material, but
Oh,
just enough to make it safe and solid for somebody to stand on.
yeah.
Or even cover it with wood sheeting, which I've seen them do at intersections before.
Yeah.
It allows you to walk on it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I went by today and it's, of course, all the yellow tape is all shredded now and, because people are getting, tearing it so they can walk on the gravel because
Right.
otherwise it's got the posts around it.
And did you say the answer to a question about it?
The answer from Patrick O'Donnell's office was essentially what I said, that gee whiz, they ran into a problem with the supply chain. So they're looking at another year before they anticipate. I know I have a part that I ordered in February for my car. I don't know if I'll ever see it.
but yeah, we asked O'Donnell's office, I asked O'Donnell's office what was happening. And so then they inquired of Caltrans and then they sent us back the answer. So we had it in writing via
Yeah, in the letter I've quoted the Caltrans letter and the O'Donnell response.
So do you want? Shall
So
we
way to put
make
that
it into
up
a motion for Northwest? Linda, I think
I
we,
beg your pardon?
let me just make sure. I think we've got a quorum for Northwest. I'm just wondering if we want to vote on the letter, if people have comments on the letter, if they've seen it.
Yeah, it's all on Northwest.
We can vote on it tonight, or we can look at it at our meeting in December and vote on it then. But because it won't go to our board till after that December meeting anyway. But it'd be really great if Central and Coastal would look at it also.
Oh yeah, we could look at it.
Yeah,
Is it a great time to vote on it now?
I'm on that committee now too.
That's right.
So the question is, do you want to vote on it tonight, Javier, or do you want to take it over to your meeting?
Chuck
Chuck has comment.
is waving again.
Chuck wants to speak.
And regarding that letter, I don't have it in front of me, but I think you referenced, or someone referenced, the hazard to the children walking to that school.
Yes,
I was under the impression, I could be wrong, at least years ago, everyone in that school was bused. No one walked to that school. Do you know if that's still the case or?
They take the students on field trips a lot. They walk up from there, like up to Ralph's to practice shopping. And so they do walk them various places.
Yeah, so that, you're right, Chuck. They do come and go by to the school by bus.
I just want to clarify the letter if it was
Right.
necessary.
No, you're right.
If it was
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, yeah. It's training opportunities.
Does it save us some time later if Northwest votes on it now?
If you're ready to vote, we can do that.
Sure.
Okay,
Fix a motion or what?
we need a motion, so we can take Linda makes the motion. Needs a second.
Second.
And then I would, let's see, let me call roll. Pat, Nave,
Yes.
I'm yes, Javier, I'm not Javier, Chuck Hart,
Yeah,
Linda Alexander,
Yes,
Jason Herring,
Yes.
Alec Norman,
Yes.
and Craig Goldfarb. Craig? Not voting. Motion carries unanimously with one person not voting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay, I had said yes.
you said yes, okay. Great, unanimous.
thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Can somebody go take a picture of that intersection that we can put with a letter?
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure, I can do that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And then I think we would send a similar letter with a few little changes to Janice Hahn and the Caltrans, if we can find the right contact for Caltrans.
I did want to comment. I walk up there all the time, and that's one of the busiest corners. There's a lot of foot traffic up there. People going to Weymouth, going to the store, people from the apartments. Now that, because of COVID, a lot of people are walking. You find that particular corner is very busy.
Let's see, we might be able to vote on Central.
Yeah,
Linda, do you think we should take it back to the committee?
Sure.
We're missing two.
Yeah, we're only three of us here
Yeah.
today for Central. Yeah,
Why don't we do that?
okay.
Yeah, it'd be great to have some photos of like some actual
I'll give it a
activity on
try.
that intersection. And the perils people have to go through to get across.
Yeah.
Very good. Coastal. I don't see there's enough of
No.
your group.
Adele, can you take it back to Coastal? Where did Adele go? Adele? Yeah, she's saying yes. She's not.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
It's muted.
Okay, good. All right. Well, then we'll do that. Then we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that's consider a motion related to the transportation demand management plan. Dan Dixon and Craig Goldfarb.
That hasn't been prepared. We're still working on it.
No problem. We'll table it and move on to the next item then. A report on Metro Vermont corridor extension feasibility study and motion to request feasibility study for extension to San Pedro. Jason?
Yep. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. So on the 3rd of the month, Metro presented this sort of status report on their feasibility study for the segment of the Vermont corridor, which you can see on the screen here on the map. Going from just a bit south of the 105 down to PCH. The study, not to go through the entire thing, but it has several different sections that they have different detail on as to what transit would look like in those different sections of the corridor. I'll just step down a little bit here. Show where there's potential stations. And so they got A, B, C, D. So they got these different sections where the corridor has different widths and possibilities for transit. Currently, there's buses on there that are not very competitive with automobiles. A car trip takes 28 minutes and a bus takes 62. So they're looking at ways to speed up this section of transit. So just buzz down here. They looked at light rail and they looked at bus. No decisions made. They're just doing initial evaluations at this point. The study will be done in, I think, May of next year. But what you may notice is that the study ends at PCH and does not continue to San Pedro. In the meeting were several neighborhood council committee members and board members also attending, where some higher end politicians. Janice Hahn was on, Annette Barragan was on. I think there was someone from Buscaino's office as well. So it had a pretty high profile attendance for this. And there were lots of comments from, I think almost all the comments were from people in San Pedro complaining that why is this not extending to San Pedro? And one of the problems you can see right here is that the Silver Line, which is parallel to it, goes to San Pedro, and this study stops right there. Now they answered us repeatedly that, hey, this is not the end all be all. This is just what we were charged with doing for this particular study, was to study to that distance, to that length. But that's basically the summary of this project. Does anyone have any questions before I justify the letter that I'm going to present in a second?
Was anything mentioned about a future extension by them, or they were just saying at this point, this is what we're looking at?
All they said was this is a study. This is not completely inclusive of what a project may be, but the study's charter was to go this far south, which is frustrating because they wouldn't have to go that much farther to get to San Pedro. You'd have 2/3 of the route. But maybe not coincidentally, if you can see on the left of the screen here, there's a green line with some dotted lines going to downtown Torrance. That's the green line, or whatever letter that is these days. That's the extension, which is already approved and going through ERs and things right now. Its terminus, when they did the study for the Green Line extension back in 2009, also goes, one of the stops is at PCH. They own a right of way along an old rail line that comes right to that area. South of there, they don't own any right of way, so they have to break new ground or do something creative. Okay. In both circumstances, whether it was via the Vermont Avenue or it's via what they call the Harbor Subdivision, which is that rail line that goes, they both terminate around the same area where the study ended. However, when they did the 2009 study, the study went all the way to San Pedro and actually connected all the way to Long Beach. So in light of this, I prepared a letter to request that they continue the study to include San Pedro. And I'll share that. If you guys are, any more questions on this, first of all, before I go forward?
Pat Nave has a question.
My ears perked up when you talked about the railroad right of way, because that's what Figueroa originally was. I wonder if there's not still some residual rights to use as a railroad right of way.
On Figueroa? Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, that was the old Los Angeles Terminal Island Railroad that Phineas Banning started.
Might have a.
Anyway, that's another topic. Let's get to the
Yeah.
letter.
I was just saying I can probably pull it up on the map and see if I can see what you're talking about.
What was kind of the orange line on the last drawing that you had? That looked like Figueroa alongside the freeway there.
Oh, the orange line?
Yeah,
Where?
or the orange on the drawing, yeah, or the red, this thing right along in there.
That's the 110 freeway.
Purple,
Is
that's actually the route of the Silver Line. So it gets off the 110 at some point, it looks like, and gets back on. That's they call it the Metro J line, which is the Silver Line. So that's the 110, and then it hops off to go to this transit center near the 91, then hops back on.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that the green line came down to PCH, but it looks to me like on the map, it only goes to Torrance.
That's as far as their study went. Or sorry, that's as far as they approved the next phase of it. Much like they're discussing a phase for Vermont's extension south, this is as far as they're studying this time. When they did the green line study, the study went all the way to San Pedro and included going through harbor, through the harbor and all the way to Long Beach. Right.
Yeah, so the green line extension that they're working on only goes to Torrance.
Correct for now, but the long-term plan, there's a phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 2 goes to roughly the area where this thing terminates, and phase 3 connects down to San Pedro for green line extension. So phase 3 would seem to be, a combination of Vermont and San Pedro. However, well, I'll get to the justification in the letter, and we can read through that and discuss why I think we should ask them to extend the study to San Pedro. Any other questions?
I have a question
Sure.
for Pat.
Yes,
Pat, isn't that right away you're talking about on Figueroa? Is it all built up now with homes? It's up to 223rd Street. Is that the same right away you're talking about?
well, just the streets, I mean, what's tended to happen, like, similar to the Pasadena Freeway, is that they would tend to follow old lines. And there's some interesting drawings, the maps that were drawn in 1856 after California became a state, and they were trying to plot out the different land rights and so forth. It showed the rail right-of-way line and an area where it's been supplanted by Figueroa. So that's why I'm saying, and when these railroad rights then were developed with other things and so forth, sometimes they had residual rights that for public transit and the like. It varies with each railroad right of way. Hollywog Park over in Redondo is like that. And other parts in LA are like that. Anyway, it's a side issue. Right now, I'd love to talk to you about it, or I can go on and on about it.
Well, here's Vermont Ave, and then you can see this gray line here. That's the Harbor subdivision, which is owned by Metro. It's a rail spur that goes down actually to the harbor. So this is eventually the green line, J line, or no, C line, whatever it's called now, route where they will eventually extend it, and they own the right of way down to Vermont Ave right around here. And the current traffic study that Metro just did, which is the only one they've done in this area since 2009, comes down Vermont Ave a little bit farther down to here, and then ends, by the LA Harbor College.
Jason, who owns the line beyond Vermont,
You mean
the right of way?
on Vermont or beyond Vermont?
No, that gray line that you were looking at.
Metro owns this gray line.
Right, but you said up to Vermont, and then beyond that.
I think they probably own it into there, but their study only went to here, and then that was phase 2 went to this section here. Then phase 3 would be connecting down to San Pedro and also to Wilmington and over to Long Beach. Eventually, they want to connect this to the Long Beach Transit Center. It's sort of a 2060 plan, maybe, who knows. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so I put this letter together to request that we extend the study beyond the current terminus at PCH and all the way to San Pedro. So I want to address it to LA Metro, copy Buscaino, Janice Hahn, Annette Barragan, anyone else we think we should include on this distribution. Vermont Transit Corridor South Bay Extension Feasibility Study. The XX neighborhood councils reviewed Metro study for an extension and were disappointed to find this extension has only been studied as far south as PCH, where it intersects with the 110. The corridor runs parallel to Metro J Line, former Silver Line bus service, which currently terminates in San Pedro. Construction of an alternate and likely superior performing transit service could result in reduced or eliminated service to San Pedro. As recently as November of 2020, Metro had contemplated eliminating service to San Pedro during its study of electrification of the Silver Line. Densification projects in San Pedro with the transit-oriented bonus have used the J/Silver Line as the metric for the development size and lowered amount of parking. Elimination of the service would have left some development projects underparked and unserved by transit, leading to further impact in our community. The neighborhood council feels that even our existing, much less enhanced connectivity is at risk. The Vermont Corridor Transit Extension Study does not include San Pedro as its logical terminus in light of the existing service. The Metro Harbor Subdivision Project Update from 2009 cites that the local south alternative, which terminates in San Pedro near the cruise ship terminal, performs well across all categories of its stage 2 screening criteria, which are the transportation system performance, cost effectiveness, community acceptability, and environmental benefits and impacts. However, only phase 1 extension, which is to downtown Torrance, is in development at this time. San Pedro is mentioned as phase 3. Since 2009, the study was completed. There have been substantial developments in San Pedro area to break ground, and many more are in some stage of the process, which underpin the urgency of this transit study extension. The list of new building projects includes, but is not limited to, West Harbor Waterfront Marketplace and Amphitheater, additional outer harbor cruise terminals, as many as 4 hotels, San Pedro Fish Market project near the Inner Harbor Cruise Terminal, Rancho San Pedro redevelopment, Alta-Sea, the Topaz building conversion to residential, and multiple infill medium-rise apartment buildings downtown. This makes San Pedro the densest residential commercial development along the entire study corridor. And unlike areas farther north on the route, there is only one way in and out of San Pedro for commuters and tourists. In the backdrop of this rapid development, the Port of Los Angeles has begun to tear up former red car tracks and plans to build over rail right-of-way along Harbor Boulevard near the cruise ship terminal, creating a bottleneck at the entrance to San Pedro. In light of the above, and with a goal to reduce emissions and traffic pressure today and in the near future, this neighborhood council urges Metro to extend the study area to downtown San Pedro.
So moved.
Is
Sounds
that you,
great.
Pat?
Yes.
No, I think it sounds really good, Jason. Makes a lot of good points, and I like the way it connects with, all the new developments, but the increasing need for good transportation to our area. So
You sure do good work, Jason. I'm a fan.
Yeah, if you look at this and zoom in, you can see the studies they did in the past in 2009. It's the whole study is available. I actually had handed it off, and I think Diana is putting it on our website, so you can look at the full study in detail, all the maps and alternatives, and how they scored all the routes if you're interested in the history of it. So Pat, maybe you could geek out on some of the routes they looked at. But there's 4 you can see. They planned as far as basically the 110 and Vermont, which is kind of where the current Vermont study is finishing. Maybe zoom in a little bit more. So you can kind of see they had 2 routes. One follows the 110 and one goes kind of along Vermont and then Gaffey into San Pedro. They join up and then terminate near the cruise ship terminal, and you can see the poor little red car line there at the end. It doesn't exist anymore. And then you can also see, Pat, or actually, I forget who asked, I think it was Xavier. The line extends towards Long Beach through Carson and then kind of dips down into Wilmington. So there's some other rail routes there that are potential connectivities to the Blue Line.
So I heard Pat make a motion. Jason, you want to second it?
Sure.
I would think you would make the motion, Pat seconded, but turned out the other way around. Is Northwest ready to vote on this?
Yes,
Call the roll.
Okay, Craig? Craig, you're muted again, I guess. I'll come back to Craig. Jason?
Yes.
Linda?
yes,
Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm calling off a different list. Chuck?
Yes,
Pat?
Yes,
Alec?
Yes.
Diana, yes. And Craig?
Yes.
Yes. Motion carries unanimously.
Jason, you may want to know that one of the quotes from a coastal community, when Joe Buscaino came and he was talking about the development in downtown. This was about 5-6 years ago. His statement was, if we build it, it will come. And that was about the transportation. So we're building it and I don't see the any more than you do, the transportation coming.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a signal to let us know that they were going to build no matter what. So
Yeah. Well, we just need to get the pitchforks out.
And the tiki torches. I think we could vote on it for Central. There's 3 of us.
I'll make a
Can I get a,
motion. I'll make a motion.
okay, can I get a second there?
A second.
Great.
Great. So we'll take a vote. Linda,
Yes,
Eugenia,
Yes.
thank you, and myself, yes.
And hopefully
We'll bring it up
Adele,
to the, what's that?
hopefully Adele will take it back to coastal.
Yeah, and I think I like to move it along with yours so that, you know, they get all of this as a group from hopefully all 3 committees, so we can get it to the boards and then send it out. I think there's no question everybody in town would support this. So we really need to get everybody behind it.
I think that the chamber will also do something. I noticed you have the phone caller has their hand up.
Um,
Do we know how to?
do we know how to do that?
Let's see, allow to talk, see what happens. Okay. I just allowed them to talk, asked to unmute. If you would phone caller, if you would identify yourself as you come on. You may have to press *6 now. See if pressing *6 will let you.
is it *9?
Well, it was *9 to get to raise the hand, but then after that, they may have to press *6.
Okay.
But they're permitted to talk. I'm gonna,
it's me, Frank.
There they go.
oh, it's Frank.
Frank,
Yeah, I've been
hello.
listening to the meeting. And
Ah.
I vote yes on the motion. I've been listening, I've been the whole time, here the whole time.
Oh, we didn't realize it was you, Frank. You were incognito.
Hey, we have 4 on our committee tonight.
Excellent. So we have 4 votes.
Yeah.
That's great. And
Thank you.
definitely we'll bring it back to the board at the next meeting.
That means you could also vote on the one on Western.
Yes, were you around for that one?
Yes, I've been here for the whole meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, perfect. I didn't realize.
Okay, yeah, I'll vote yes on that one also.
Okay, we'll
Unanimous.
we'll
Well, you
do
have
it
to,
on
you
this
have
thing.
to, you have to have a motion still for that one.
I
Yeah,
make
can I
the
get a-
motion that we send that letter, the letter on the intersection.
Okay, can we get a second?
Challenges with Caltrans, yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll take a quick vote. Linda,
Yes,
Frank,
Yes,
Eugenia,
Yes.
and myself, yes. So, great. So we got 2 to
Yay.
take back. Very good. And hopefully Coastal will follow on that. Adele?
Oops, she ran away.
There she is.
This is,
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
We were just requesting that you take that back to the committee.
Okay, yes, numbers 3 and number 4.
Correct.
Yes, I have it marked in red,
number
permanent marker.
Very good.
3 and number 5.
That's
4.
right.
Oh, yes, 5, not 4, right? 3 and 5.
Yeah, 3 and 5.
Okay. Are you going to send forward us the proposed wording?
They're in the agenda packet for tonight's meeting.
Oh, okay. All right. Look, I'll look in that.
Yes. Very good. Well, great job, Jason. Looks good. So. Any other questions related to that? Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is the formation of a design subcommittee, which we have been talking about. And I think I've been thinking about how to structure that and, how to do it. I think I'd like to have suggest that we have a group of about 4 people to volunteer for that, 4 or 5 to start, and we can see how that goes. I know some people have shown interest on that, Siggy from our committee, and I don't know if anybody else from the other councils would like to participate. It'd be good to have a mix of the council representations on the board, on this subcommittee. And, and particularly when I see like the project we saw today with the Beacon project, I thought there was some positive things. And at the same time, I just wish they had done more of some of those things to keep it more concise and have a better project. And it would be good to kind of get in at the beginning of the projects before they get totally, set in place. And it's hard to make any comments that would produce any changes. But I think, we have good guidelines on the CPIO and other documents that set the rules for some of the design guidelines for particular areas like downtown and Pacific Avenue and other corridors that are important in the city. So I think that would be the base of how we would look at it. Some of the things I've been thinking about maybe is if there was a way that we could kind of, not sure if a grading of how they rate on the scale of meeting the guidelines and whether it's a good design or a bad design in that sense, based on those parameters. So I think if we use that as a starting point, then we could kind of create something that is not necessarily just opinion, but it's something that we already have in town as a guideline. And so we haven't set any time for a meeting, but if anybody would like to volunteer to be in the subcommittee, I would be happy to hear. Linda.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the context, but at one point I was invited to meet with it's about a 4 or 5 member panel, and I think they were all architects from around LA. And I don't know whether that Diane or Pat, do you remember? I can't even remember. I think it must have been CD15. I don't think it was the port.
The
And this
Urban
was a number of years
Urban
ago.
Institute, maybe?
Urban
Oh.
Line?
No, this was a design committee
Hmm.
that were, maybe they were, oh, I don't know. Anyway, but you know, for this kind of group, Javier, I am so poor at being able to express, you know, with architecture, it's like what I see, I know what I like, you know, and I can't explain it. I'd love to see, you know, several of you architects together as this. I'm thinking of someone like Peter Rothy, who's been a great community volunteer. I know he's very involved with Feed and Be Fed now, but hopefully, I believe he's retired, so he could have some time. But I, you know, not, you know, he'd be nice to approach, and I wouldn't mind approaching it, but I'd have more support for a group that was architects rather, although I know some of you are better at this describing your interest in architecture than I am. But
There are two
I
other
think
people.
if we could encourage other architects in the community, that would be great. I mean, I think that would be, I know of one other person, but I don't know.
Well, Phil, and who's the fellow down on 7th or 8th Street?
James, James.
yeah, I'm trying to think of the guy on
James, yeah.
On 9th.
Street. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's, and I might have his name around. I mean, we could approach, but
Phil's been
definitely,
looking-
you know, it would be good to have somebody that has the interest and the time to participate.
oh, 9th, yeah, you're right, 9th, the guy owns some
It-
property on 9th and Mesa.
Yeah, something James or James
Bill James.
something.
Bill James, isn't
Bill
it?
James,
James.
Bill James.
Yeah. And it could also be like, you know, people that have experience with like historic preservation, things like that, because I think in some areas it's also a concern of appropriateness in areas like downtown and in locations like, you know, the one across City Hall.
Well, we have Frank Anderson, for heaven's sake, who's been the president of the Historic Society for
That's true.
hundreds of years.
That's true, Frank.
I'm not anymore.
But you have some of the experience, and you know, I heard some of the things you guys were talking about last night on the board meeting, which were having to do with some of the historic parts of town that we would like to preserve. So I think in that sense, that also brings an interesting component to the table. So
Yeah, Liz Johnson and Linda
Grimes.
Grimes have both expressed an interest.
Oh, good.
And
Okay.
Ziggy was
Ziggy.
also interested.
yeah, I think, you know,
So you,
having the architecture background helps a lot. But I think if
Yeah.
you were to follow the documents and read their guidelines, I think they're not too difficult to understand. And you could kind of get into the language that, you know, we would need to know for giving an opinion and making an assessment of a particular design. So
Yeah, Liz Schindler Johnson has been very involved with, and she's on the County Art Commission, but
Yes,
she's
she
been very
is.
involved with historical preservation and has some, I think, education background as well.
and she was on the design review committee that came up with the original downtown San Pedro design guidelines. As a part of
okay.
CRA. So I
So-
mean, for her, I think she's a logical person.
Yeah,
That would be great. So my question is, should we approach those people to let them know that we are forming this subcommittee and then see if they're interested in participating?
I can try to get a hold of Peter Rothy. I'm happy to talk to Liz, but other people could talk to Liz too, so.
Yeah, Liz has already said she's interested.
Okay. Maybe we'll set up a meet time and see who can show up and maybe start talking about how we could incorporate that into our process and make it a positive thing. I don't necessarily want it to be a time-consuming thing that brings nothing to the table, but I think there are some things to look at. And I think if we could get in early on the process where we could make some suggestions, it could be more effective. So I need to figure out how to do that, how to plug it into that part of the process early on.
Just another thought, Javier. I don't know if we've talked about Frank. If Frank isn't interested, and I couldn't tell whether he was or wasn't, and you're interested in the Historical Society, the current president might be interested. She's come to a lot of our meetings. She isn't here tonight, but she has attended a number of our planning committee meetings.
Mona.
Mona, yeah.
Mona,
Yeah.
yeah. He'd be a good
Give
candidate for the
Frank
committee.
something to do, now that he's not on the board, we don't want him to be just sitting around eating.
Frank has a lot to
bonbons.
do.
Frank will bring
Frank hasn't
cookies
stopped
and
doing
milk. But yeah, no, I think that's an important thing, because also trying to preserve some of the historic elements of our town, it would be important to address, and perhaps that's one way to do that as well, along with somebody from historic preservation. So anyway, maybe we can approach some of those people and see if we could get enough people interested, and then start talking about the process and what we could do, and then we could bring it back and present it and just have some feedback on what we were thinking. So not sure if we could do that for December, but maybe we could bring it early on next year.
January.
Yeah.
Well, I'll track down Peter Rothy, and if there's anybody else you want me to contact, I will.
Okay. Very good. All right, so that does it for that. We'll move on to item 7, which is updates and other items of interest to the committee. Diana, do you have? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, and the map that Jason shared last meeting has been updated to include most of these changes. The courthouse, the groundbreaking has been delayed. It was supposed to be December. Now they're talking about January or February. I don't know why the delay, but it has been delayed. Harbor View House is anticipated to break ground very soon. Break ground is kind of the wrong word there.
Yeah.
Start the rehab work soon. I'm not sure if people know that the Warner Grand is going to be closing in June. Scheduled to close in June for a major refurbishment, and Sacred Grounds and Findings will both have to either close or relocate. They will not be coming, once the refurbishment is done, they will not be coming back to that site. So they'll either close or they'll find a new place. There's been a lot of, people being interested in what's happening with the Croatian Cultural Center. Evidently, there's a real need to bring the electricity and the plumbing up to code, but because of its historical designation, they have to bring in a consultant to talk to them about that. So the first step is the city has to identify the funds for a consultant. And then once they do that and come up with a plan, then they will have to identify the funds for all the refurbishment. So at that, up until then, there's really, it sounds like a long time before anything's going to happen with that property. We did get an email from a stakeholder who suggested that we ask to have the film removed from the windows because it's cracked and doesn't look very good. And it seems to me like that's something, Javier, you might want to take up at your central meeting.
Yes, I could do that.
There's also been an appeal filed on the topaz conversion. That was a surprise. It's the same group that filed the appeal on the Holland Partners project. This is the group that is trying to get the project labor agreements, which it was turned down. I mean, the appeal was denied at the Harbor Planning Commission. I can't figure out what the grounds is that this group could be applying for, because they're talking about environmental, but since there's no, the only work is really interior. But anyway, there has been one filed. Of particular interest to Northwest was the property at 847 West 10th Street, where the Solid Rock Church is. I think that's what it's called. Well,
Rock solid. Mhm.
the what? Rock Solid?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Rock Solid Church. That property is entitled for a small lot development, and it's now been put up for sale. That's the same developer as the one down on the two on Pacific, but this one actually was single family for sale property. So that too bad. The Altasea got you may have heard, a $30 million grant to upgrade Pier 58. And so Tim McCosker is going to be at our December meeting to discuss the plans. The planning department plans to release something on the SB implementation in December. So we'll be looking for that. If it comes in time, we may have that on our December agenda. If not, it'll be on our January agenda. We asked about the TOC maps that needed to be updated, and Axel said that they have been asking the planning department themselves to update the maps, so far unsuccessfully. But yeah, he agreed that they need to be done. And then 501 North Mesa, which is a property owned by the city. HACLA is buying that to use it as part of what housing residents of Rancho, as Rancho is being rebuilt. And I see Pat Nave's hand.
I just wanted you to, what do you know about what's going to go where findings and sacred grounds are now?
What I've heard is it'll be a combination of ticket office and administrative offices for the theater. Right now, the administrative office is upstairs on the second floor. They're evidently going to move it down to the street level. I think it's too bad, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can move down to one of the other spaces.
And the last time I talked to David at Sacred Grounds, he said he'd probably just close and retire. And Annette is trying to find a place for findings.
Yeah, but all those characters that hang out at sacred grounds, that's what gives the street flavor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
flavor.
Yeah,
You could deal without
haven't-
that flavor.
I
There's
haven't
some
seen there was
aroma,
a
maybe I
couple of
should
guys
say.
that I used to see on lawn chairs out there every day,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen them lately, but that was pretty interesting, especially when I first came into town. I was like, used to seeing them every day.
You talking about the guys on the other side of the street,
Right. I'm sorry.
right? Yeah, across the street from Sacred Grounds, there was a group of men who were hanging out their lawn chairs.
Yeah, I almost felt like joining them, bringing out my own lawn chair.
It felt very European to me.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay, very good. One of the things that I was brought up at Central's board last night was, and Frank can help me out on this. We've been talking about the word escapes me, the connectivity plan at the harbor. And as they started their process, I understand that other groups have started making comments and suggestions. So I think we should. I know that they're still trying to do the RFP for the consultant and all that, but I think we probably could maybe start coming up with some of the things that we've been talking about, like preserving the right of way and things like that. Not sure what the timing of that should be, but I think we were talking about maybe picking some members out of the different councils and representing us out there I don't think we ever got too far with that idea.
So I think that's an excellent idea, Javier. I think maybe putting that on our agenda for the next meeting. The RFP went out. It's due, I think, December 5th, I believe. And then they expect to be negotiating for a month or so after that. So sometime mid-January, or they should be reviewing sometime mid-January, the consultant should be selected. And then after that, they will enter into contract negotiations. So we're probably looking at, I would guess, at least February, which gives us some time to talk about what we'd like to see in the plan. I think putting that on our next agenda would be a great idea. Doug Epperhart has his hand up.
Yeah, I see. Doug?
Oh,
Let me unmute. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I would just point out that when this was raised, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, Coastal appointed Alan Franz and Noel Gould to serve on that group. And we're still waiting for everybody else to act. So
And Northwest.
whenever you're ready.
Northwest appointed Jason and Pat Nave.
Okay,
But Central has not appointed anyone yet.
okay.
That's
well,
right. We're
And
coming late
there's a
into the
reason
game.
for that.
We've been
Well-
ready to go. We did our part.
Okay, well, so that's good to know. So we'll get our act together in Central and get a couple people.
You know what the challenge is there.
I know. That's
Yep.
We're
been
not
part of
gonna
the,
be sending anybody.
that's part of the issue.
I think the other two better go ahead. We'll have to work through the planning committee.
Well,
Because if a certain person is appointed to this, then the whole damn thing blows up.
Don't talk
Yeah,
to
I
me
guess,
about that. I'm not.
it
What's
doesn't necessarily have to be a, official kinds of actions and so forth. It's got to be a group that can work with the consultant and with the, the chamber and with the PBID and with the port. So Javier, maybe you and Lou could do it or something like that.
Well, it's gonna be, we cannot go to the board and have that happen, Pat. It's
Right.
just- It
So don't go to the
will
board.
not happen.
Why go to the board? You and Javier do it.
Yeah, no, because we already have the chair of the port committee has assigned himself to that task.
Well, I'll just join as a stakeholder.
Yeah,
Look, it was.
we're stuck, Pat, we're stuck.
Well, you may be stuck. Look, the idea was to develop a kind of a contact group for consultants and so forth. And if there's going to be constantly running back to the neighborhood councils and things like that for votes and so forth, the consultants' work will never get done, and the port will drop the idea of talking to people. I'll just
Yeah.
tell you right now.
Well, yeah, that's why frankly, just, I think Coastal and Northwest ought to just go do their thing and let Central scream. I mean, Javier can put his comments in sideways.
That may be what we wind up
It
doing.
may have to be that way
Right.
because,
But don't let it be the thing that stops the process.
exactly.
We have the other members that could contribute, and that would be great. I think we just need to be able to participate in that.
somehow, yeah.
Jason, you're in that group. Excellent. So I think we just need to make our points, and as a group, we know what those things are. So
Right.
Well, and I think your idea of having a fuller discussion on what we want to see in the connectivity plan is really good, Javier.
yeah, I think the sooner we get those things started, the better we could present
Yeah.
our goal, and hopefully they can address those as part of the initial study. So anyway, that's all I wanted to bring up. So our next item is public comment on items not on the agenda. Do we have anything from the public or?
My comment is it's time for dinner.
Huh.
I'm ready to motion to adjourn.
Accepted. So I will see everybody on December 15, which is our next meeting. And for Central, we have a meeting tomorrow. So sorry, but hopefully you'll make it to dinner earlier. So
I can't go to, well, we'll talk offline.
And
that's
Northwest,
Anyone want to consider not having a meeting in December?
Northwest will have one December 8th.
Yeah,
was that
okay.
Diana?
I said, does anyone want to consider not having one in December?
Well, I considered not having a Northwest one in December, but we have 3 short items. It should only be, that should be a very short meeting, unless something happens between now and then. We also previously did set the December 17th meeting date for this committee, and we did invite Altac to present, and they did accept. So
You mean the
humbug.
15?
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
yeah,
That's right. Everybody, if we don't see each other online, happy
Pat,
Thanksgiving.
Pat has his hand raised.
Yes,
Yeah, I want to
Pat.
ask Javier or Linda, what happened on this StarKist motions on your agenda last night?
They both got
They
passed.
passed.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
We have a couple of new members on the board who are, they're cat people, for lack of a better term. But they're also, because they wander around, they've come up with this information on Terminal Island that nobody else had been paying attention to. So